again, or just hello probably. Welcome to another lore video. This episode is mostly going to be talking about the Carians, but of course we can't avoid talking about Marika as well, so that's just how the whole story is structured. But first of all, who are the Carians? In the game story, we learn that the Carians are descended from a group known as the Astrologers, and that these astrologers lived on the mountaintops with the giants, and that they lived in harmony with these giants. In fact, we could go as far as to say that these astrologers were kind of like giant lovers. We know that these giants were fire god worshippers. They worship the fell god. And this means that indirectly the Carians are also fell god lovers. In the last episode, I was speculating that Marika had had an affair with this fell god and had children with him, and that's where Mesmer and Melina came from. But then, of course, Marika, being Marika, is going to stab this fell god in the back. What I did mention before was how much this probably irritated the Carians. However, I don't think the Carians knew about this really, because I believe Marika is going to trick the Carians into thinking that the fell god is still alive when in fact he's not. And hopefully the wheels are turning in your head and you're already putting this together. How is Marika going to trick the Carians into thinking that the fell god's still alive? Well, that's where our boy Radagon comes in. And you might be thinking, Radagon's not my boy. Radagon kind of sucks, and that would be the correct opinion. Radagon does suck. I need to try to stick to the topic here. So I think in this old world before Marika, we've got this picture of the Carians and the fire giants taking place. We've also got some other things in the world that are maybe kind of interesting to look at. So we're going to have the Nox, who are above ground, and we've got this glow-eyed queen and her godskins out there skinning gods and doing whatever they're doing with their snake business. We've also got beasts and dragons and some sort of strange religion happening that we haven't touched on yet. Maybe that'll be another video, another year. But we know that this picture changes, so how does this all change? Fire giants and the astrologers are wiped out by Marika, but the Carians survive, so we can assume they're related, but not directly connected to these astrologers. Glow-eyed Queen disappears, the Nox gets sent underground, and the Beast Church loses all its power, and there's got to be a connection with this Beast Church and the Glow-eyed Queen as well that's kind of hidden away, but it's got to be there. Okay, so that's just a very rough, quick summary of Marika's world. So Marika, with the help of Godfrey, has conquered all the lands between, except the Carians have remained the standouts, like they don't want to submit to her. And this tells us something very important about the Carians, namely that they have a lot of political power as well as magical power. Importantly, this old order would have had the Carians as a central figure. But all this old order and this old system of government was something that Marika was going to just replace with her own stuff, so it's all going to be a problem that she's going to have to solve. And the first option for Marika in solving problems is obviously just to murder her problems. This is where our boy Godfrey comes in. Godfrey was the best murderer that Marika could find, and he did a pretty good murder, except when it got to the Carians, it seems like he couldn't do anything there, apparently. This probably is something like, Godfrey is speccing into the strength build, and he's like, I'm not speccing into magic. Screw that. I don't need range. I'm Godfrey, I got a big axe. Come at me, bro. But the Carians would not come at him, so he just kind of wandered off, I guess. Godfrey just kind of wanders into the woods and forgets about things for a while. And when Godfrey's wandering around the woods, he stumbles upon this portal, and he clicks on the portal, and it takes him somewhere new, and that's where he went, so we can just forget about him. But back to this Liurnian war. Marika's trying to take over Liurnia and it's just not going very well, so they have to have a second war. But who do we have leading this war for Marika? None other than our boy Radagon once again. This is where we actually meet Radagon in the story, but it's strange because he just seems like he appears out of nowhere, right? But he didn't. Radagon might be kind of crappy military leader, but he's definitely quite attractive, and not just to us. He would have also been very attractive to the Carians because of the way he was presented to them. Yes, it was deception from the very beginning. Radagon was a manufactured fell god to suit those who worshipped the fell god in the past. And then, so how about where did this guy come from? Can we answer that now, finally? I think we can. Maybe. Probably yes. Quite simply, Marika defeated the fell god. And as you have learned, there is great value in the bodies of defeated gods. So of course Marika is going to recycle this material. But instead of being some hideous monster that no one would dare look upon, Marika would reforge and reshape this fallen god into the image of something that she would rather see. This empty shell would take the form of Radagon. And we could certainly ask a question like, is Radagon still conscious inside this, or is he not? And it seems like he must be because Marika talks to him, right? But this information that we get in Melina's dialogue, I believe this must be happening before the Fell God is like completely destroyed, like in the last moments of his life probably. So we're going from like Fell God to Radagon in that moment basically. And this is happening at the exact moment when Marika's shaman magic is fusing the two of them together. And since Melina is a child of Marika and the Fell God like we saw last time, she definitely did exist at this moment, so she probably overheard it. But let's just recap a few of these things that Marika has been doing to the Carians. First of all, she comes and kills their god. Next, she tries to invade them and take over their whole system of government, just dominate them. And when that domination didn't seem to work, Marika employs covert tactics under the guise of peace and unity and a return to an old order. Marika sneaks in her control and her power, and this is made real with her marriage and her children. And of course, now we need to introduce another character who Radagon was married to, which is obviously Renalla. We find Renalla utterly defeated, apparently heartbroken by this departure of Radagon. But I want to highlight it's not just a simple breakup, it's a lot more than that. It's more of a magical betrayal. So Marika has perfectly engineered this situation where, Renalla's own children serve as prison bars, keeping her inside, right? So on top of all the horrible things that Marika did to the Carians in the past, now you can add this to it as well. And of all the horrible things and all horrible betrayals that happen in this game and the story, I don't think anything is as bad as what Marika does to Renalla, obviously in the form of Radagon. And now I think it's just something we need to point out when it comes to motives. If Marika needs to watch her back from anyone, I don't think anyone's more important than Renalla. Well, except maybe Ranni. So unlike the other children of Renalla and Radagon, Rykard and Radon, Ranni stays by her mother's side long after all these wars have ended. And even though Rykard is long gone into his snake world, he also totally hates Marika and everything she stands for, and Rykard actually helps Ranni to some small extent later. Radon was different from these other two kids. He seemed to really, drink the Kool-Aid of Marika's whole Golden Order. Radon was just the type of good boy that was useful to Marika. And of course, Radon's loyalty would later be, paid back by betrayal from Marika, as it always is. But I'm going to talk more about this in a different video, so we'll just leave it for now. Back to Ranni and why Ranni is really different from the other two kids. The big thing we know about Ranni is that she follows in her mother's footsteps. To some extent, she studies sorcery, right? But she also goes kind of outside the school and learns more sorcery that her mother would never have allowed. I mean, the whole doll transfer thing is totally Ranni's invention that she's creating with Celivis's help, I think, probably. In any case, who knows what exactly happened, but Ranni went out into the world, she did her own research, and she came to the conclusion that Marika was evil. But it also seems pretty obvious that Ranni would also be motivated by revenge for what happened to Renalla. However, I believe Ranni, much like her mother, are not helpless to their own emotions like it might seem in some kind of typical revenge plot. Ranni seems mostly concerned with not being controlled by anything else, and her path as an Empyrean was just that. So I think the revenge element could be there, but the much more important element that we need to look at here is the idea of autonomy and what happens when autonomy is violated. Human beings are, after all, self-directed creatures, even though it may not seem like that often. Without getting too far into the weeds on kind of psychoanalysis topics, there are simply people in the world who have deficits in empathy, and often these people can violate the autonomy of others, in pursuing their own goals. We see this exact behavior exhibited over and over again by Queen Marika. Marika seems to have one goal, and that goal is to preserve Queen Marika. And to accomplish this goal, she'll stop at nothing. However, the spirit of domination that Marika is filled with will end up being her downfall eventually, because people who treat others as objects tend to be pretty blind. Marika thinks she can crush everyone with no consequence. She would violate the autonomy of others in her quest for power. And if there is a motivation for what Ranni is going to do to get back at Marika later, besides just revenge, it would probably have to do with this violation of autonomy. And if we apply the idea of autonomy more to a people, it's something more like sovereignty. Now, I also speculated something in an earlier video that was kind of strange about Ranni being the actual, true representation of this greater will or this old religion that existed before Marika. So whatever that actually was. And there's obviously, there's no way for me to prove any of this, but we don't really need to prove anything, because if we take the idea of fate seriously, then Ranni's ascension into this position was always decided. This was always going to happen. Dawn holding back the stars was just, delaying the inevitable. Could interpret this returning to nature as restoring the real greater will. This is a world where mankind's desires are kind of irrelevant to the bigger picture. And we should pause there for a second and recognize that just like Ranni, the natural world doesn't care about humanity or its desires or wishes or anything. Very important to recognize that what's natural may not be actually good for us or in any way desirable. And this is something that we call the naturalistic fallacy. So that's one you can just ask a philosopher about. But I kind of want to finish this video discussion on the Carians by turning back to Renalla now, because I believe Renalla is the real star of the Carian family here. Renalla can't be killed, so it seems like she's got power that rivals Marika. Renalla is also a teacher, and as head of the academy must be also a lover of wisdom. As I've said many times, Renalla is no fool. And that it may seem as though she's, paralyzed and catatonic here, but she's not. Renalla, we know, has secrets to keep, and in keeping her secrets, she will do whatever it takes. So we see both Thops and Selen crossing her in this way, and they end up getting punished for it. We only see the after effects of this, but for sure Renalla is doing this to them. So there could be some larger secrets that Renalla is trying to keep for herself. Like, for example, what's the story with these Albinaurics? I think that's got to be something that the Carians had to be involved in some way. Let's now turn to this mysterious amber egg that Renalla holds on to so dearly. You can assume from this thing that this is probably the source of her, sweeting resurrection magic that she has with her students. And this whole situation is kind of strange, so let's pick it apart a little bit. Because we also know that this amber egg came from Radagon, and that should probably make us pretty suspicious of it. First of all, what's happening in this boss fight in this first phase with these kids and Renalla in the center of them all? It seems like we're supposed to imagine that maybe Renalla is teaching them some kind of lesson. Occasionally one of these children will be singled out, and we have to find them to break the spell that they're casting on Renalla. The spell these children cast on Renalla may be protecting her, but it's also seems to be trapping her inside. But these children seem to be phasing in and out of being something else, which is a tombstone. Like, they're not ghosts, they're literally like the gravestones themselves that Renalla switches them into and throws them at you when she wants to. We actually learned something in the DLC interesting about gravestones. After some time, these gravestones simply evaporate, sending the spirits back up into the stars where they came from originally. But this amber egg version is clearly not doing that. It's just looping in a way that Marika likes to do. So that's why we just have this one kid repeating over and over and over again. We can take from this that these are not real children, and Renalla doesn't really care for these things too much. It's much more that she's being trapped by these things than anything else. We break her out of that. Then in phase 2, the gravestone kids are all gone, and instead we've got her real daughter, Ranni, coming to assist. We see Renalla now on her own feet fighting against us instead of being a victim as she was in the first phase. And we see Renalla engaging in all kinds of spirit summoning magic, so she's got this power as well, which seems to be her old power. The last words that Renalla speaks as we defeat her have to do with her daughter, Ranni.
Little Ranni, my dear daughter, weave thy night into being.
Notice she's not saying, Ranni, get revenge for me. The only thing she's commanding Ranni to do is to do what's in her heart, basically. So then contrast that with what Marika does to Mesmer. And that may be one reason why Renalla's kids seem to like her, where Marika's kids seem to hate her, unless they're being brainwashed. Next time I want to look at Miquella, Radon, and Malenia a little bit, and we're going to look at how Marika affects these characters. Things are going to get pretty weird and nasty in that episode, so if that's interesting, come back. Remember, please like and subscribe. Thanks. Oh, and the Carians are probably descended from these Onyx Lords for whatever reason. I don't know what the relevance is for that, but I think it's just in there. So, I mean, other than just being where they got their gravity magic from, I don't even know what these things are. And I kind of don't care, if I'm being honest, That probably just means there's something here that I've totally overlooked and forgotten about. Too late now. Okay, thanks guys. Bye-bye.